Hello, this is Eileen Silverglide, Chief Revenue Officer of SBJ, and welcome to this edition of SBJ Live, brought to you by our awesome partners and good friends at TeamSnap. Here at SBJ Live, it is so important to us at SBJ that all of you who are listening in, that you learn something, that you make sure that this hour is a great use of your time and you walk away a little bit smarter. So today, we're going to talk about an incredibly important topic. There is so much news and support for women's sports right now. But in order to have women's sports, what do you need? You need participation from girls. So the conversation today is going to go to the root of how women's sports become an incredible, powerful force for good. So here's how it's going to work. We're going to take your questions throughout. So please do post them, and I'm going to go ahead and feed those questions to the team. You're going to hear from some incredible brands who are going to talk about the impact that they're having on girls' participation, from AT&T and e.l.f. Cosmetics. Moderating today's conversation is my good friend, Nicole McCormack from TeamSnap. So Nicole, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great, thanks Eileen, great to be here. And before we jump into today's discussion, I want to introduce our three amazing panelists. So first, as Director of AT&T Sponsorships and Experiential Marketing, Bill Mosley works to create lasting connections between AT&T and the people and businesses that we interact with every day. Bill's been in his current role since 2006 and with the company since 1998. And he currently leads AT&T's efforts across the following properties and platforms: She's Connected by AT&T, which we'll talk more about, See Her in Sports, AT&T Stadium and the Dallas Cowboys, Tribeca Festival and AT&T Presents Untold Stories, and AT&T Performing Arts Center. In addition, Bill and his team are responsible for supporting AT&T Business and FirstNet sponsorship investments. Second, we have Patrick O'Keefe. Patrick has spent nearly 20 years in the beauty industry, focused on bringing brands to life with an integrated approach. He joined the e.l.f. beauty team in September of 2019 as Vice President Integrated Marketing Communications, where he drives seamless integration and bulletproof brand consistency across all paid media, social media, influencer marketing, and public relations for all brands in the e.l.f. beauty portfolio. And finally, we have Danette Leighton, who serves as CEO of the Women's Sports Foundation, founded by Billie Jean King. Since 1974, WSF has empowered and connected girls and women through the power of sport, leading in research, advocacy, and community programming that improves access to play at every level. To date, WSF has invested over $100 million to this effort. And prior to joining WSF, Danette herself had a 30-year career as a sports business executive. She served as CMO and Vice President of Brand Marketing for an NBA franchise, a WNBA franchise, a Power 5 collegiate conference, Division I athletics programs, and spent time at Sony representing their sports sponsorship of the PGA Tour's Sony Open in Hawaii. A big welcome to all three of you, and thank you for joining us today. So before we dive in, I thought we would actually kick off with a video from the Women's Sports Foundation that I think sets the tone for today's conversation quite well. So let's roll that first video, please.
When we move, we're better. It's when we stand still that we're in trouble. We believe that having equal opportunity to be active and to play is the way we achieve our full potential. To use sport to unlock everything you want to be and all you want to do, so that every girl and woman can realize her power. It's her time, it's our time. All girls, all women, all sports.
Awesome. Danette, I just love that video, and that won't be the last time today we see Billie Jean King herself there. So can you kick us off, Danette? What are the Women's Sports Foundation's findings around girls' participation rates in youth sports? Where are we at today?
Well, I would like to say I know you guys did a great job of putting some stats together from our research. And, the one thing that I want to say is we've made a lot of progress and we should be proud of that. And we did a great research report last year when we were celebrating 50 years of Title IX. But the irony is we're still where the boys were back before Title IX existed. So we are still missing out as it relates to the high school participation for girls, about 1 million different participation numbers. And so I think what's really important in the work that obviously we have done for almost 50 years, it'll be our 50th anniversary next year. I like to say that Billie Jean wasn't sleeping 50 years ago between Battle of the Sexes match that she did against Bobby Riggs, equal pay at the US Open, and then obviously founding us. So the disparity still exists significantly, and that's why we obviously are critical in making sure that Title IX is protected, that we look at all of the entire ecosystem of women's sports, where the access and the pipeline is the starting point of that, and youth sports and high school sports are incredibly important to that pipeline. And so some of the disparities you can see from a teen perspective on the slide as it relates to girls and boys. I think what's interesting is still we have a lot of challenges and issues, in particularly the BIPOC girl community and opportunities for access, as well as more rural communities and more underserved communities as it relates to different challenges of those disparities. And those disparities exist for a lot of different reasons. It can be from a cost perspective of not being able to have access because things have gotten very expensive, just pure opportunity because they don't have facilities to play in. And some of the simplest things are things like not knowing that girls need certain types of equipment, like a sports bra. And so there's a lot of different reasons why those disparities exist, but unfortunately still do. And it's why it's critical that we have brands like AT&T and e.l.f. that want to, and TeamSnap, that obviously want to be a part of this entire ecosystem to make sure that we have representation for girls to be able to want to keep playing.
Yeah, it's amazing that we've made so much progress and yet are still so far behind. Patrick, I know that when you learned about some of these stats, it inspired you to bring girls in sports to the forefront of the e.l.f. cosmetics strategy. What was that decision-making process like for you?
Well, it was very easy. We are at the beginning stages of really embracing this opportunity in the space. What I would say is that our foundation is really based on empowerment. We are bold disruptors with a kind heart. You can see that behind me on the screen. We disrupt norms, we shape culture, and we connect communities. And what I love about what's happening in this space is the opportunity for us to kind of lean into our purpose to really transcend and change the game. Our mission at e.l.f. is to, we are a beauty entertainment brand. Beauty is obviously our primary focus, but we always want to figure out a way to empower in the space.
That's awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of the things you're doing to empower young girls, kind of at the grassroots level? I know you've just kicked it off, but you have some great initiatives underway.
Yeah, no, I thank you for that question. It's brilliant, and I love it. I was, at Art Basel about a year ago, and I met Anderson from the TeamSnap team, and I was so impressed with what he had to say. His stat on stage is by the age of 14, girls are dropping out of sports 2 times at the rate of boys, which is not cool at all. And I mean, the reasons for that is the social stigma, decreased quality of experiences, kind of everything Danette said, lack of positive role models. While we know that those 3 bullets are a fair assessment, there are a lot of women out there that want to be and lead and inspire young girls. And we've really taken a stance in the space. And that's why we're partnering with TeamSnap to really create a space for these young girls to have a moment. What I'm really most proud of in our early days here is, again, leading back into our mission and our purpose, is, we are early on, I think the Indy 500 was taking place, and I had the opportunity to work with Catherine Legge, who was the only woman driver in the Indy 500. And why did we do it? Is because we wanted to give a space and empower and lean into a role model like Catherine to inspire young girls if they choose to want to be a race car driver. Also, and I love, what Danette and team are doing. Obviously, Billie Jean King is a big part of what they're doing over in that space. But, I was excited. I had the opportunity. It was a crazy story. I won't bore you with all the details. Bottom line is there was a gentleman that introduced me to a drone show. And why is that important to sports? Is because he led the way and paved the path for me to connect with Billie Jean and her team. And why do we do it? Is because, as you heard, celebrating 50 years of equal pay for equal play, and obviously leaning in the space of Battle of the Sexes, was really leaning up leading up into e.l.f.'s Alley. And I say this and I talk about these moments because they are inspiring young girls. During the U.S. Open, when this year we got a box and we invited 4 young tennis girl athletes, and we got them to meet Billie Jean and hang out with her. And it was really a special moment for her to kind of mentor and really give sound advice, which is what she does really well. So we want to find spaces like that. We will continue to lean in where we see opportunity and to drive the story home.
I love that. Danette, coming back to you. So we're talking about these disparities, and talk to us a little about why that's significant. What are girls missing out of when they do drop out of sports at the age of 14?
So there are so many things that girls benefit from playing sports. And I think what's important is we see a lot and we talk a lot about the elite athlete side of the house, right? Whether it be Olympians, whether it be NWSL players, WNBA players. And those are all incredibly important part of obviously making investment in those types of organizations. And they're what everybody sees. And honestly, when girls see people that they can be, role models are key, and representation does matter. And we have some major issues in representation in women's sports. From the coaching side of the house, we see major declines of women coaching women. From the reality of when brands invest in individual athletes or invest in professional teams or invest in collegiate women's sports or invest in every part of the ecosystem, it proves to young girls that, oh, they matter. Oh, there's something in which we can go be a part of. For so long, girls didn't have those opportunities. And I think what's really important to note is that this is so much bigger than a small percentage that goes on to be that elite athlete. It actually is most important, in my personal opinion. I'm an example of it because I'm what the WSF calls a middle school softball dropout. I was one of those middle school girls. Is that the life lessons that you learn when you play a team sport or any sport are all the exact same life lessons you learn in business. And so what I think is really important for parents and for brands and for girls to know that for this entire system to work, everybody needs to understand my favorite stat, which is that 94% of C-suite women played sports, with over half of those playing at the collegiate level. That's not a coincidence. And we've only been playing sports for 50 years, which is why Title IX is so important. And so when you see this slide of just, of course, what you would expect as a parent or somebody else to recognize the power of what playing sports does for a young girl, for all of the mental health reasons, higher self-esteem reasons, also put into play what it does to our economy and creating a more diverse workforce, what it does to, I can't tell you how many conversations I have with brands who want to hire former female athletes, whether it's in the wealth management vertical, whether it's in the sports business vertical, it doesn't matter because there are attributes of female athletes that are leadership attributes. And I think it's really, really important that you don't have to go be that less than 1% elite athlete, but girls need to play no matter what level they play to because those life lessons will last them a lifetime.
Yeah, I use that quote, that stat all the time. The 94% of C-suite female executives played sports, right? And Danette, I think we chatted a little one time about how you being a sports executive, some of those lessons you did learn from playing sports, you have taken to the boardrooms as you've been in some of those roles. And I'm another example of that who can attest to the same. So you talked on this earlier and a little bit throughout, but I think it's really important to identify what are the barriers that girls specifically face where brands can start to lean in and try and make meaningful changes to help address those. Can you talk a little bit more about those?
Sure. I think one of the biggest things that I like to talk about connecting all the dots to the women's sports ecosystem. So it really starts with the access in the pipeline, which I call as girls and youth sports, right? That didn't exist until 50 years ago because Title IX opened up the opportunities that required high schools and then collegiate athletics to start to be able to find opportunities for women to be educated. A lot of people don't realize that the GI Bill and college scholarships are still the highest different types of entities and things in this country that have allowed both women and people of color to be educated. So there are components of this that go deeper than just playing the sport. It's also about an educational opportunity. And so the importance for me is that all of those access points don't get hindered or don't get disrupted in a way that could hurt girls and women losing opportunities. And from my personal opinion of being a former CMO, one of the hardest things early on was getting brands to want to invest in women's sports as its own type of smart business decision. And you're starting to finally see that in the momentum that's behind women's sports now. And I think that's because we finally have hit what I like to say the fruits of our labor of 50 years of women being able to play sports. Because of Title IX, you now have this generational relevance that everybody's used to seeing girls and women play sports. And it's finally at a place where we've had a traditional model that was really geared towards how the men's sports business model was built. And brands are recognizing this combination of both being purpose-driven and smart business to invest in different properties that are all around women's sports. But it's really critical that people don't forget that the access point in the beginning part of that journey is really, really imperative to the entire ecosystem. Again, because a very small percentage goes on to being in that kind of elite athlete area. And what we want is more girls and more women to have and reap all the benefits that are out there. And a lot of those benefits are hard for those girls who don't have access, don't have funding, don't have role models. Women like to see women look like them, don't understand the differences of coaching girls and coaching women. All of these things have been barriers, and brands can play a big role by showing to the world, like e.l.f. has done, AT&T has done, and TeamSnap has done, of how important this is. And they're actually showing that representation on the big screen and making girls realize that they can dream to be something and that playing sports is cool and that being a part of it can be a part of their journey. And when brands choose to invest and brands choose to use their brand to showcase that, it makes a huge impact, not just financially, but to how the rest of the society perceives women and women's sports.
Danette, I love everything you just said. Everything. And I love that at e.l.f. we are reflecting the diverse community that we serve within our space. And I think our team is 75% women, over 40% diverse, and 65% millennial. And I'll just take that stat even further. We are one of only 4 publicly traded companies in the US out of 4,200. I'm going to say that again, 1 out of 4 publicly traded companies in the US out of 4,200 with a board of directors that is 2/3 women and 1/3 diverse. And the reason I celebrate that is because it aligns with everything you just said. We are here to really support and empower young girls and give them a space to find their own uniqueness within the space at e.l.f. So I just wanted to share that with the team.
Bravo, Patrick. Not bravo that you're one of only 4, but bravo that you are in that 4. Let's hope that number grows incredibly in the years to come. Bill, I'm going to pull you in here because I think what Patrick just talked about, AT&T has done a lot in this space. I'm thinking of See Her and your involvement there, but also, you know, Danette talking about positive role models for girls in sports and the lack of it. Before we jump to AT&T though, one of the things Danette just talked about was also lack of female coaches, lack of women coaches. I think the stat, Danette, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the stat is actually that only 1 in 4 youth sports coaches are women, right? And you actually have a kind of a fun personal experience. Your family has a fun personal experience with that. If you wouldn't mind sharing, and then we can dive into some of the things AT&T is doing.
Sure, happy to. Well, I have 2 sons. Both of them played football. We live in Texas. Football's pretty big here, especially this time of year. And my youngest was a pretty good running back. And at one point, I think it was the tail end of his middle school years, beginning of his high school years, he was being recruited by a young woman who was a football coach for their touch football team. And let's just say he was a little reluctant. It's probably not their first choice is to go play for a woman. It's still culturally not the norm. But I encouraged him to, and wouldn't you know, so did all of his friends who ultimately ended up playing on the varsity team. Not only were they well coached, she went on to win the first tournament they participated in. And then the last trip I made before everything shut down in 2020, they went on to win the state championships in touch football in Austin. So, you know, I think it was a great proof point. And I was, you know, very clear to remind him she's not a good woman football coach. She's just a good football coach. Her father was a football coach, and that's what she wanted to do. And I can tell you it was remarkable because, yes, she coached against male counterparts and beat them all. And I don't believe they expected it. So it was a great way to kind of bring to life what I do for a living in my family.
Yeah, and I know it inspired you a bit in terms of what you do, to your point, what you do at AT&T. So tell us a little bit more about how AT&T is addressing this issue of lack of positive role models for girls in sport.
Sure. So I think the primary way is through our content series, She's Connected by AT&T, which launched in 2020. And that's really an opportunity. It was really inspired by our role as one of the inaugural WNBA changemakers. All NBA sponsors get rights to the WNBA, but not all of those sponsors lean in to the W. And at the time, there's more now, but us, Nike and Deloitte leaned in and became inaugural WNBA changemakers. We are the first non-apparel brand to be on all 12 of the WNBA team jerseys. We really wanted to help tell that story. And so we came up with the idea about She's Connected by AT&T. And, that really is kind of a twofold program because it really showcases and hands the mic to these amazing women athletes, helps tell their stories. But because of the pay disparity, women athletes are twice as dependent on sponsor dollars and investments. And so we were able to make that investment. And also we're a business selling connectivity. We were able to support them with our connectivity. And so it was really to showcase the multi-hyphenated, abilities of these women, their businesses, their passions, and hand the mic to them. And this is just, we're one of the largest employers in the country and one of the biggest advertisers. And I think we have a responsibility to get representation right. And this is just a way for us to do that effectively.
Awesome. I actually think we do have one of the videos from the She's Connected series, right? Bill, do you want to say anything about it and then we'll run it quickly here?
We do. It's currently in market, and I believe we'll be sending links to where you can find this. This is our 30-second promotional spot for Enrique Ngumboale, who is a player for the Dallas Wings and an entrepreneur herself.
Through She's Connected, AT&T is changing what's possible for women entrepreneurs by investing in women-owned businesses. I'm a female athlete. I have to deal with everything that comes with that. Obviously, I know how hard it is for women to excel with equality. I feel like it's my duty to help that and help it grow. So I invest in companies to do with women in sports. Did you know we're rewarding $20,000 to a woman-owned business? Don't miss out on updates about the She's Connected by AT&T grant winner.
Yeah, what I love about that, right? It's not just celebrating these female athletes on the court or on the field, but also as business leaders and entrepreneurs, and then, serving as role models and boosting up other female business leaders, business owners, entrepreneurs, back to Danette's whole conversation about the ecosystem that this creates, right?
Absolutely. I mean, this is an opportunity for young girls to see what they can become, whether it's an athlete or a business owner or both in the same video. And we feel it's important to inspire them, to show the representation and give them role models that they can see and touch. We did one last year with Becky Hammon, who is now the head coach of the WNBA's Las Vegas Aces and WNBA champion coach. At the time, she was the assistant head coach of the San Antonio Spurs. And if you know anything about Coach Greg Popovich, he likes to win basketball games. He doesn't hire people just to say he hired a woman. He hired an amazing basketball coach, and she proved that in her first year. Enrique probably won't like me saying this, but she may do it again this year. It's because the Aces are heavily favored. And she was able to, at AT&T Center at the time, host a young woman high school basketball player and really coach her and mentor her on her journey. And so it's a great opportunity to, give role models to these young girls. And to Danette's point, give them something to look forward to and aspire to.
Yeah. Patrick, e.l.f. is also focused on the topic of positive role models for girls. Tell us a little bit more about how you're bringing this to life.
Thank you. So I was on mute. So I'm back. I am back. I'm really excited. We have a really strong partnership with the Dot Dash Meredith group that also one of their publications is People. And we love the people because we stand for the people and we're about the people and we live for the people. So leaning in with them, we were able to create a franchise within their portfolio called Pep Talk. And we created the series in the spirit of really inspiring all women, all girls, and youth sports. So we partnered with Lisa Leslie, Juju Watkins, just a couple names to put out there. But the one that we most recently did, and I'd love to play this little clip, is with Pep Talk with Billie Jean King. Again, so inspired by what she's done to really create equal pay for equal play, what she did with, on Battle of the Sexes, bringing, again, really creating moments to inspire young girls and youth in sports to keep them to stay in the sport. So let's play the clip.
Hi, I'm Billie Jean King, and I champion equality, and I've partnered with People and e.l.f. tonight on Pep Talk. Before the King Riggs match, I gave myself a pep talk. Every single day, I visualized winning, no matter what was going on, to stay focused, stay in the present. I do have a saying, pressure's a privilege. Every single day, every single person has all kinds of pressure on themselves. It's how we look at something, whether we feel a lot of pressure or not. I like pressure. It helps me realize it's an opportunity. I love holy hydration. I use it in the morning, I use it at night. I don't know, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel happy. Holy hydration. I love that. So much for the pep talk. I hope it helps you because it helps me a lot. So give yourself a pep talk every day.
I love that so much. She's such an inspirational human being, and I respect her and everything she does. We had the chance to see her speak with Venus Williams, and apparently they've been friends forever. And Danette, I don't know if you were there, but we had a moment with her, and just every word that came out of her mouth, I could have listened to her for 5 hours. Just her spirit, her energy, the space that she really is about celebrating, young girls and women, and obviously allies in the space is just remarkable.
Patrick, if I could just go ahead and jump in and follow on that. We have a great question just came in from an audience participant around how do you think about using content and storytelling? We obviously saw that a little bit with your clip here to inspire girls in sport. What is the process that you go through to deliver this type of video content?
Yeah, we are, again, in the beginning stages of really building out our strategy and plan. And these are some of the examples that we're leaning into. But I can tell you from an e.l.f. perspective, and this is off topic, but it kind of relates. We did a commercial with Jennifer Coolidge. It was really about an insight, leaning into an insight for the big game, right? And we created from that, what we learned is she kept saying things off camera that inspired us to create a series called Vanity Table Talk. And I think that was really a moment for us. So what we want to do is lean in. Billie Jean has so many great lines that we can tap into. How do we lean into that based on an insight? We move at the speed of culture. We don't have a playbook all the time. Sometimes we listen to our community. Our community tells us what we need to be doing to lean into this space. So as we embark in this journey together, just meeting, Bill and connecting with Danette and Nicole, this is also going to inspire us to do unique things together. I'm excited. I loved everything Bill had to say. I love what you are creating over at AT&T, and let's chat. Let's figure it out together.
Bill, how about you on that question? I know that content is a big part of what you're doing to sort of support both women and girls in sports.
Sure. Well, and our company's business journey is probably well documented. When we started She's Connected, we were more a content and connectivity company, having owned Warner Media and DirecTV. We are now firmly a connectivity company. As you've seen for our latest advertising, connecting changes everything. And as I mentioned about us being responsible to kind of lead, given our size and our scale. We look beyond just our technology and its connectivity, but also our role as a corporate citizen in the country. And we look to use this platform to connect people to greater possibilities. And so this connects young girls and women with greater possibilities, giving them role models. We're also providing the actual, technology of connectivity to small businesses. I think you saw at the end of the video, we expanded She's Connected. This is our 3rd season, we're calling it now. We're already planning our 4th season, but we did a small business contest. Turns out, and we thought we'll get a few hundred submissions for $20,000 as a micro grant and free wireless service for a year. Hey, turns out that women-owned businesses are really in need of capital. We had over 6,500 submissions to this, and we just picked our winner, and we'll have a 5th piece of She's Connected content that will feature that small business winner. We'll host them, on top of my responsibilities with women's sports. I also have AT&T Stadium and the Dallas Cowboys, so we'll host them at a Cowboys game and celebrate their small business and hopefully give them some exposure to help them grow that small business. We'll also mentor several others. So I think storytelling, is all brand work is good storytelling at its core. And so this is firmly brand work for us. This is where the market is. The market wants to see this content. The market wants to see more women's sports. They want to see more women role models. And so we're more than happy to support that enterprise and tell those stories.
The questions are coming in fast and furious, which we love to see. So I'm going to go ahead and, Danette, they're stacking up for you in particular. So Danette, this is one that I think is interesting, but definitely Bill, Patrick, feel free to weigh in as well. What do you think about non-female brands and their support for these critical issues? It's an interesting one where obviously, Patrick, you're about cosmetics, not saying, of course, that there are not many who use cosmetics, but nonetheless, can you share with us your perspective on what you've seen in terms of more traditionally male brands and their support for women and girls in engagement and participation in sports?
Yeah, I will use a couple different examples. I've had the pleasure of being in the sports business for a very long time. Throughout my career, I only had one female boss. I had more male allies and more male leaders that helped me on my pathway to my success. It's no different than the importance of women's sports shouldn't be seen as just a female brand. I mean, I remember in the early days of the W, and I'm so thankful for the AT&Ts and the Procter and Gambles and a lot of brands that came in really early that were primarily maybe targeting some female-based products. But the reality that we've seen for the longest time in women's sports is, I always say, the avidity of fans that support women's sports is insane. Early in the years, it might have been too small of a number for brands to say this is worth the investment, but we're past that now. That momentum is actually here, and it's here because, again, 50 years of women being able to play sports. So male allies and brands, I don't care if you're a male-specific brand, a female-specific brand, just a brand. I mean, again, this is what sports has been a microcosm of society for so long. You have to just look at the population. If you're a brand marketer, you're deciding who are the decision makers, who are the consumers. And women's sports is just a really smart place to be. One, it's a blank canvas, and there's so much opportunity. Two, it also has, again, as a former CMO, I was in shock of how loyal women's sports fans were early on in this kind of like trajectory. And if I'm a brand, I'm all over that, because you're creating so many more, you're doing great positive work, but you're also, I think, finding loyalists to your product in a very authentic and genuine way. And that's what I think any brand marketer wants to do. It has to be that combination. And so men and male allies, male athlete allies, products, they're critical. I mean, look who we have on the call right now between Bill and Patrick. They're both male allies. One is particularly, more of a consumer brand that crosses over men and women. And of course, but I would say e.l.f. crosses over men and women as well. It's not, nothing in this society now is one or the other. It's just, that's the part that I think is really, always been shocking to me. But I think it's also just, again, the reality of where we are. Like, 50 years is not that long. And everybody sits there and wants to make these apples to apples comparisons. I am so thankful we're 50 years in, but what I don't want to see happen is people not realize that you've got to keep protecting that. So when I see everybody who's on the group chat here that are doing amazing work in their communities, especially for youth sports and the pipeline and all over the world, that fight can't stop. And that's why we're here, to make sure people understand that we see it every day, something that is attacking the opportunity for girls to play sports, issues on trying to take away things about Title IX that would really disadvantage the current landscape of collegiate athletics, my former kind of place where I was at. There's so many hurdles in front of us, which is why I want people to understand that if you play a part in this ecosystem and more brands see the power of investing in women's sports, we're only going to continue to see trajectory, and we're only going to see better opportunities for our young people, both young boys and young girls, when they can see role models that are women. It's just good. And I think that's the part for me that I clearly am passionate about this. I've been in it a long time. I've seen it from both sides. But I know as a mother of a daughter, I want her to be able to play whatever the heck she wants to play.
Danette,
And to be able to live those dreams. And you don't necessarily have to go be that collegiate athlete or that pro athlete in the end. It's just gain those lessons that you learn by playing sport and be a part of something that really can make an impact and just make our society better. In such a divisive society we have right now, sports has always been that breaker. I mean, I get the luxury of working for Billie Jean King. I mean, it's like you have one conversation with her and you sit there and literally, it's like, I couldn't say no to go work for Billie and Alana. Like, she has always paid it forward. For me, seeing at the US Open, seeing Coco thank Billie for her $3 million check. Yeah, that's what Billie did. And we can't assume that that's going to keep going. We all have to carry the torch. And I think that's the thing that we all have to do on this call is it's our job to take women's sports to the level they deserve to be at. And it's brands like on this call that need to continue to do that work, and people that are doing the hard work at the grassroots level. Don't stop.
Danette for president. You got my vote.
I'm not passionate about this topic at
Oh
all.
my God, very. I love it. I love everything that came out of your mouth. It was beautiful. Perfect.
Although, Danette, you touched on something that I just want to jump in, which is how, I think for the brands, probably the key question here that people are asking, and I'm seeing it come up in some of the questions, which is for the brands that are joining us here. As brands, how do you reinforce that supporting girls in sports isn't just a good thing to do, but that it's a smart business decision? You talked about sitting on both sides, but Bill, I know you and AT&T have really changed your advertising at AT&T and have changed the way you inform your sports investments. But how do you make the case that it's not just a good thing to do, but it's good for business?
All right. Somehow my microphone muted itself. Well, you know, I think part of our culture has always been that, you know, Danette mentioned that she worked for few women over the course. I've probably reported to more women in my 25-year career with AT&T than men. I know I have. And so it's just cultural here. And I think really, if you think about our journey, starting in 2016, we were an inaugural member of See Her. We committed to improve our advertising as measured by the gender equality measure by 20% by 2020. Well, we got that done by the end of 2018, and we doubled it by the end of 2020. And that's what really informed our approach. And that was easy to do, right? Because not only is it the right thing to do, but there's data that correlates better performing ads with higher GEM scores. In other words, if you represent women and girls appropriately in your advertising, the market, which is men and women, oh, by the way, women make the majority of the purchasing decisions, but the market is men and women, the market reacted, and those were better performing ads. And we've been above GEM norms. 90% of our ads are as measured since then. And we wanted to lean into sports. We've always invested heavily in sports. And we thought this is a great opportunity to leverage that best practice into sports. And we're seeing the return. We've had over 200 million impressions with She's Connected. It's just good brand work, and you get a return on the investment. And women athletes are very appreciative. We mentioned that they're 2 times more dependent on sponsorship dollars, but they are so great to work with and so committed, and their fans are very loyal. And so it's just good business. It's the right thing to do, and it's good business. And that led us to, you know, one of the benefits of GEM, whether you GEM scored your ads or not, was the accountability. I feel strongly that once the industry knew that they were being measured for how women and girls appeared in their ads, folks started focusing on that, whether they GEM scored their ads or not. And so we created the See Her in Sports scorecard. See Her in Sports was a sports focus from See Her that launched in 2019. Mark Wright, our VP of Media and Sponsorships, is the co-chair of that. And we launched the See Her in Sports scorecard to drive the same behavior, to say, look, we want to measure how people are investing in and portraying women in sports. And I think we're seeing there's a sea change. 2020 moved the needle pretty significantly, but we're seeing a sea change and a seminal moment in women's sports, an appeal for women's sports. And so that's what we've looked to do, is really leveraging what we saw in advertising and lean into sports and women's sports for the same reasons.
To jump on just that, I think at e.l.f. we continue to explore different ways to, again, empower young girls across anything, in gaming specifically. Gaming you could view as a sport, but we did start a channel on Twitch called e.l.f.U, and basically it was in response that over 70% of young boys were bullying young girls on the platform. And so our call to action in that space is to really stream with all young girls and of course men allies, but we do makeup, they play games, and then they kick ass. And it's really fun to watch these young girls come in and feel empowered in a safe space. And so it's about creating that safe space for all women and young girls.
Yeah, I think we've seen stats too that girls who do drop out of sports early, one of the key reasons that they cite is that they've been made fun of, or kind of bullied or made fun of for playing sports, and that's at a rate much higher for girls, unfortunately, than for boys in the sports arena. We touched on this a little, and Danette, you've touched on it, and women's sports, we've all seen the increased attention on women's sports from consumers. Brands are starting to lean in. Why do you think it's happening right now?
Well, I beat the drum on Title IX, and I'll just use this example. I think a lot of us in the United States were disappointed that the U.S. women's national team didn't win it all at the World Cup. But I can tell you from the Women's Sports Foundation perspective, to remind everybody on this call of the global impact we make, there were 32 rosters in the World Cup for representing different countries around the world. Only 10 of them didn't have an athlete that benefited either playing high school in the United States or college in the United States, which means Title IX drove those rosters. So what I encourage everybody to understand is that we've been blessed to have a bill that required it. It is not something you can take lightly. You have to understand that it's taken us 50 years to gain some generational relevance. And what I like to see is probably my early days in the NBA and WNBA, we didn't see it as much. But now what I love seeing is NBA players, male players, collegiate male players, whose mom was actually the athlete in their family, whose sister played and is at the same level. Like, you see now something that has changed and shifted because you're seeing the fruits of 50 years. And that's why I can't stress enough how important that pipeline and access is, because it all starts there. And the United States has really made that global impact. We speak to countries all the time about trying to understand how they can have a system like ours, how they can find ways in which, and we have made a real impact in having brands that are global and having brands that recognize this. You're not just changing what's happening in our country, you're changing what's happening around the world. And that's only going to be better for society in general. And that's what I think sports has always been able to cross those challenging subject matters and topics, because it's always been about including everyone and breaking down barriers. And this is something that sports allows us to do. And you can follow somebody and be excited about somebody, follow a team, but everybody matters. And there's different ways in which everyone plays a role. And I love seeing the people in this chat and how many organizations are global and as well as national here in the United States. It takes, just like raising a kid, it takes a village. And I think everybody needs to work together to understand where we are in this moment, make sure that people understand that this can't be a fad. I've watched the fads of women's sports throughout my life. This is a moment in time that we've hit the tipping point, but it needs brands to invest in seeing the power of this that is good for their business, good for making sure that girls and women continue to have access. But let's not be naive that you don't have to keep protecting what we have. And that's obviously what we do on a day-to-day basis. and finding the right tools and data for you all to use to make sure that you can be successful in your communities and successful in your organizations. Because I think, honestly, I just think we have so much more potential. We've been accepting the crumbs for a very, very long time. And so when I think about that, I'm like, we should never have been accepting the small slice of the pie. Now it's time, we should have our whole pie to ourselves. And I think brands like AT&T and e.l.f. and TeamSnap have realized that, and so have a lot more great brands that are part of it. We've got some remarkable national partners that have had some of their biggest promotional marketing activities ever being aligned with us. And I think that's something that really is powerful, that you can look at this through a lot of different lenses of how you can help not-for-profits, but also use those, in our case, as a way to build your brand as well. And I see a lot of not-for-profits on this chat. There's ways to invest in both ways. So that I think about the whole women's sports ecosystem: high school, college, not-for-profits, grassroots, youth, NWSL, WNBA, Team USA, USA Water Polo, whatever that may be, and invest in the whole ecosystem. Find your piece that makes sense for your brand, but there's something for everybody, and it's very powerful, and you're not going to be disappointed.
A great question just came in from the audience, and I just love helping people. I think this is so much of what makes these types of conversations magical. But looking for some advice. So Patrick and Bill, a question came in from a grassroots organization. So doing a lot of great work in terms of promoting women and girls' opportunities. What advice do you give to someone who is trying to get a brand like you guys are obviously leading to invest? What's that one piece of advice?
Do you want to go, Bill? I can take it, or we both can.
Go for it.
No, I'm just going to do a big shout out to TeamSnap. I mean, I think what you guys are doing in this space is just a gentle reminder about the power of your app and what you guys do within that app. And it's really a safe space. It's a place for the players. It's a place for the mothers and fathers to see and experience what happens in a day-to-day basis. So just, again, finding those places, the power of the mother and father, and leaning in and really creating that moment for these young kids to be a part of something big is really cool. And I'm excited about our contest that we're doing with you. We're doing like again, supporting young girls and youth sports is giving them a chance to celebrate what they do. And what they're doing is they're going to be creating a cheer using e.l.f.isms, because that's what we do. And then the winning team will get $5,000 to support their sports initiative in their community. So again, it doesn't have to be something major. Then what we did is we connected TeamSnap with people. And so to help amplify their story, because people clearly has a huge volume of connection. So the grassroots starts with TeamSnap and leaning into the app, and then taking that a step further and helping to tell that story broadly with a massive publication on people. So that's what I love, is the grassroots, making it bigger and giving a megaphone and a platform for not only a great organization like TeamSnap, but also what you guys are doing in the space to help support young athletes.
Yeah.
Bill, how about for you? What would you say? What is that advice that you give to that organization to land a big brand like you?
I think the advice would be to keep growing your brand, keep growing from the grassroots what you're doing. The reality is, while we're focused on women's sports and love investing in women's sports, and there's a great return on that, we can't sponsor everything. We don't have unlimited resources to do that. It's part of why we did our small business contest. We wanted to extend our investment in women's sports to women-owned small businesses. Keep building, keep the grind, keep building your brand, keep trying. Eventually, we're looking to invest in audiences. That's what brands are looking to do. They're looking to engage audiences. As I mentioned before, it's about getting a return on your investment, but also doing the right thing. And it's that balance, right? So I would say keep at it, keep networking. We have invested in smaller organizations and billions of dollars over the last 50 plus years in women-owned small businesses. So keep at it and keep working on your value proposition. And ultimately the investments will come. As I mentioned earlier, I think the market is improving, and the market is there right now for women's sports. So keep at it, because there is more capital coming your way.
Excellent. I think, Eileen, I think we might wrap. I think that was a lot of the questions. Patrick, I appreciate the shout out to TeamSnap. One of the things that we love that we do too, in addition to our app, is actually facilitate on-field sponsorships of local youth sports organizations across the country, kind of at scale. And we give a portion of those brand dollars directly back to those local sports and leagues. So if there are some grassroots organizations in there, please do get in touch, see how we can facilitate some of the brand investment that we're working with your way. But I just want to thank all three of you for an incredible and inspiring conversation. And I hope that the brands who are on this call, maybe who were on the fence, I saw a question about what if you're on the fence. I hope the trio here was convincing enough to get you off the fence. And for the nonprofits and the grassroots organizations, I echo what Danette said, which is keep doing your amazing good work. And as Bill said, the artillery is coming your way, and I think in terms of investment. So huge thanks, Bill, Patrick, Danette, really good conversation. Eileen, anything you want to close off on?
Yes, I will say I did see that question come in, Nicole, around the brand sitting on the fence, and I was sold personally by Danette when she said it's about the avid fan. It's about someone who is really deeply engaging with, with that sport, with those athletes. Of course, a brand should be there. So nice work on the sales job there, Danette. But obviously, panelists, thank you so much. Thank you, Nicole, for moderating. Everyone, just so you know. You will be getting the slides from the conversation today sent to you in the next day or so, as well as some links to those tremendous videos that we got to see. So on behalf of SBJ and TeamSnap, thank you so much for listening in. This had to be our most robust chat networking we've ever had. So I appreciate audience participation. Obviously, folks are very passionate about this topic. So be good to yourselves, keep supporting, and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.